Hey, my peeps, my peeps. We are locking down the truth. I'm going to lock it down. I'm going to do the lockdown because, it's just like I can't say the word without doing this. We're locking down the truth today on something super powerful. I'm way excited to have my guest today on Influential TV on Marci Lock. For those of you that are joining us for the first time, this is just a badass, awesome resource and place where you get to come. And it looks like I'm noticing, Kate, I look naked. I'm wearing a bikini still because in California, I realized, I'm like, why wear clothes? This is the place you can get away with being like, no shirt, no shoes, no service. That doesn't exist here. It's like, why are you wearing a shirt? So I tend to found I'm always either in a bikini or workout clothes. So that's how I'm rolling, but I do have stuff on. I was like, wow, I look naked with my overlay there. It's hidden. Fun stuff. Okay, so I'm not naked, but that could influence sales. That would be awesome. That could influence people participating. Kate, what do you think?
I think that might be a good technique.
It kind of flows with where we're going today, right? Like sexual energy, the flow of creation, all that awesome stuff. So again, if you guys have not seen the shows before, this is how we roll. It just is pure authenticity, raw, real. I don't script anything. No one else I have in my space scripts anything. We just show up authentic and in truth. So what the Marci Lock app is designed to literally be a resource for you to start shifting and changing and transforming life to create the Rockin Body and the life that you want. So free workouts, recipes, you name it, breakthrough tips. But the bonus awesomeness is this TV show and the radio show, all the past people that have been on the show. You can be able to go and get access to those TV shows and learn these golden nuggets from these awesome people that are living only in an epic space of life. And that's why I bring on the individuals that I do. It's called Influential TV for a reason, because these people have the results. If you don't have the fucking results, then there's, something to say for that. So today with me, Kate and I are going to dig into something really awesome. And actually, this is super cool, Kate, because this has been coming up a lot lately. Chris Stubbs and I are going to be doing our Sex, Money, and Relationships event in October. My Goddess Retreat experience is next week. Kate is actually coming to that. For all of you women who are going to be on your way out here to Cali next week to do the Badass Goddess event with me. Kate is going to be here to dig into this aspect of sexual, like your sexual flow, your feminine energy, that vulnerability flow, that energy of creation, tapping into allowing yourself to receive pleasure, that you're literally in the energy creation or the energy of creation, let's say. So sacral chakra. So today's kind of a little taste of this awesomeness that Kate brings. And first off, she's really studied and done, so many different aspects. I could go off forever on her array of knowledge on all sorts of things, from sex to, relationships to, I'm going to start throwing out fun words like the clit and pleasure and, like the G-spot and everything. Kate has no holds bar, so she's awesome. She's definitely someone cool to listen to in a realm that most people don't understand, right, Kate? Because we don't talk about this stuff, right?
Nope, most people don't. Most people don't talk about it. Most women and men as well aren't even familiar with the physiology of their body, where things are located, what is down there. We don't even have the word. Wait.
You have to say down there with parentheses or something.
Yeah, well that's what, oh, whatever happened down there, and there's words for all of these things, and there's so much juiciness and aliveness that comes from our pelvic area, our pelvic region, not just the vagina or the penis, that there's, when you don't have words, you can't talk about it really. And then plus
what you just tapped on even is that most people, you said we don't talk about it, and down there even specifically shows there's a block and a barrier in society of acceptance of talking about something that's part of us, and talking about an energy source, and that's why there's this block we've had since the time we're little of being in tune with our bodies and being in tune with the sacral chakra, which is the creation center, and just that energy flow, and not attaching shame or guilt or any of this old shit stories, right? So that's your genius. This is what you do. So obviously you're penis, clitoris, G-spot,
yeah.
That's how we roll, because this is real, truth, reality. So I'm so grateful for you in this space, because it's just not very prevalent out there for people to realize that everything about you and everything that you're experiencing is just your perfect growth process. And whenever we're attaching shame, the energy of shame is the lowest vibrating energy. So this is what you really do. So tell us how this started, or really, how did you go from, like, what was your experience, your pain that you were in that allowed you to go through your journey and find this as your message?
Wow. Well, it's been a long journey, but I guess I would start maybe 4 or 5 years ago. So I've been in a relationship now for almost 16 years. So I've been with my husband a long time, since we were teenagers. And I would say about 4 or 5 years ago, I had a little mini meltdown. Like, I had everything that looked like what I wanted in my life. I had this amazing relationship. I had this kick-ass job where I, was making tons of money and didn't, just seemed to be sailing. We had a beautiful house. We lived by the water. It was, and I just wasn't happy. And it was like I was always kind of aching for more. And after being in a relationship for about 10 years or whatever, our sex life had kind of just become kind of blah. And I was like, I was going crazy because I was like, I can't live, like, I love this man. Like, I love him to death. And I can't live the rest of my life with kind of like a mediocre sex life. Mm-hmm. And to make it even worse, he thought he was having a great time. Like, he was like, oh, he didn't think there was anything wrong with our relationship or our sex life or anything like that. And that's just because he just totally adores me, and that's cool. But my experience, which I later found out is truly, whether you're having good sex or not, is truly up to you and what you're up to in your own life and what you choose to do and how you choose to show up, and has actually a lot less to do with the other person. I mean, they are obviously involved and you have to trust that person, but really, if you're not expressing yourself, both just verbally, saying what you have to say, if you're not expressing your creativity, if you're not doing what you truly want to do in life, heaven forbid if you're lying in your relationship and anywhere, I mean, that is going to cut your sexual flow off. And I think that's what happens in a lot of relationships. And I have a lot of friends who have great relationships, but they're not really having great sex, or,
wait. So what you're saying is you are the creator of your sex experience.
Oh, totally.
Like,
yeah.
You get to take full responsibility for your sexual relationship with your spouse or whatever. Mm-hmm. Instead of saying, oh, I'm not having great sex because of this person. So it's just like in life, taking the blame game out and taking responsibility of, like, how do I show up in sex? I love that you say this. Mm-hmm. Okay, you guys ready to take notes? This is like the nugget I got from Kate. She mm-hmm. says, how you do sex is how you do life.
Mm-hmm.
Ta-da! Like, yeah. That's awesomeness, Kate, because it does reflect in everything. I believe how you show up is how you show up in one thing is how you show up in everything. I kick my ass every morning. How I show up in my workout is how I show up in life. I kick ass in my business. It's how I show up. I have amazing, epic relationships, and with my boys, it's how I show up. Like, so this makes so much sense. How mm-hmm. you do sex mm-hmm. is literally a reflection of how you're showing up in life. Are you being open and authentic and expressive and communicating fully and like allowing yourself to, like, enjoy pleasure and seize flow? So when did that, like, how did that become an aha for you? You were just, or start you down that journey, I guess. You're saying that's mm-hmm. where you were at. You realize, I love my husband, but my sex life is not a rockin'.
Yeah, and that leads to all kinds of projections. So sooner or later, he went from being like this amazing man to somebody I didn't even really want to be around. He just kind of irritated me, and so that led down a whole journey of coaching. Luckily, I had an amazing executive coach at my company, and I started kind of just starting to look inward, because it didn't make sense to me that somebody who was so cool like a year ago could have become such a terrible person. So I started to look inward. And it was something
that's a golden nugget right there. Is like, there's a reason why you were in love and why you did it. So is it yeah. really love just doesn't last and things change, yeah. or is it like you have the choice to be more in love every day? And how do you create that experience?
Yeah. And what happened for me is I didn't want to talk about sex. I didn't want to say that was actually the problem. So I made up all these other stories about why he wasn't the one for me, or we just weren't meant to be together. And I did all this kind of coaching and therapy around, like, our issues. But really, my main issue was sex, but I didn't want to talk about it. So once I got to, like, that point, it wasn't until a couple years later when I just had this huge epiphany of that when I, don't express what I want, either in the bedroom or in life. When I'm in a job that I don't really want to be in and I'm coming home drained and not really feeling alive from what I've been doing all day. When I've been, kind of holding things back from him, not sharing this, not sharing that, whatever it is that comes up, that I'm just totally sucking and draining my energy. And, you know, there's not even space for sex to happen. So it wasn't about it. The journey kind of, I would say 6 months into this whole exploration, I really got, it wasn't about trying to fix him. And it was more about me getting on track with what do I really want to do with my life? Who am I about? How do I want to show up? You know, what friends am I hanging out with that I don't really want to be hanging out with? What haven't I expressed directly to him, but also to other people? So that's another thing that I think is the most important thing when it comes to sex is authenticity. If you're not being authentic, you're cutting off, you know, all of your energy. You're just letting like a dribble. So if you imagine we have like this huge pipeline of energy, you're just like, whoosh, because it takes a ton of energy to lie. So I got
to not be you, to pretend. To not be you and to pretend. It takes so much energy. That's why it's so freeing when you learn to become authentic. Like, I've lived that way for so many years. I have no idea how to be any other way because that's how I exist now. But it's like I have no filter because I'm not judging anything. It's like, well, if I have this thought, obviously I get to get clear with this thought and speak this thought. And that it's so freeing. I just, it's almost hard for me to grasp living any other way for people. And that's what they experience, where it's just like, oh, you're so drained because you're living in a fucking mask.
Well, but the thing is that, at least in my experience, and I think with most people I work with, that's what they think is normal. You know, what society says is normal is to feel kind of crappy and maybe have a few good moments, or if all the stars align and maybe for a short while you can have hot sex, but then after a while it all just goes to hell and you should just hang on.
Or just during college or some other perceptions, right?
Yeah. So once I started looking at myself, I had a lot of cleaning up to do and a lot of adjusting, you know, things to say to people, you know, old unkept agreements to kind of clear up. And once I did all of that, then it kind of got clear. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm totally in love with this dude. He's really amazing. Now, what do we want to create? And once I realized I wanted to be with him, even though having hot sex with him seemed like the most impossible thing ever, I was like, I'm just going to go for it because I have one life to live. And, and within a few months, I realized that he was totally willing to show up and change and do whatever and experiment and play and express, and that the only thing that was keeping me from having what I want was my ability and willingness to express, you know, what I wanted, you know, things I was scared of, all of those things. So one of my favorite teachers, Kathleen Hendricks, says the most important sexual organ in your body is located right here.
Throat chakra.
Yes. Expression. And for me, that was key. So
that's huge. So this is something I want to dig into that I know your expertise is just awesome at. It was a big eye-opener for me when I remember, you know, going through, again, I'd been through it several times, Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. And for whatever reason, you know how like your consciousness shifts and your expansion shifts and you see things like more clearly and differently. And like I remember reading to the degree he said in Think and Grow Rich that high producers or entrepreneurs have a very high sexual energy, and that you get to learn to tap into that energy and like funnel it or channel it to kick ass in your business and to create, right? And I remember being like, the first time I understood that, I was like, whoa, like I was like, wow, no wonder I'm such a sexual horny bitch. Like that's kind of was the first thought, because I was like, my experience was I did always have to channel in some way, not you know, almost having the experience that, you know, you have these thought processes about the world of, oh, guys want sex and that women don't, or women don't as often, or like there's all the, and I'm just like, and there's so many perceptions and stories, right? And for me, it was a different experience. It was like I was the high sexual energy, and yet it was almost like a guy's sexual energy didn't match my sexual energy, because it's just like, I just saw that as part of an everyday experience of life and just like sexual energy. But coming from, you know, the marriage and the experience that I had, I was extremely, you know, just sheltered and blocked off and in limiting beliefs in these things. So I know that my sex life when I was married was not this. It was definitely probably the female, like always showing up for the man, not expressing yourself or not even being about you. So it's such a massive different. It was huge for me to go, wow, like, and understanding your sexual energy is an energy of creation. So that's kind of what I would love you to shed some light on. Why is it that the sexual energy is an energy of creation, and how do you literally tap into that and funnel that? Because you mentioned you have so much sexual energy, more, if you're tapped into that capacity, there's more than you can handle. And that's almost why it's like, it's not, or let me say it this way, there's more than is really necessary for just sex.
Exactly. Well, you can't.
How do you channel that?
Yeah, so that's one thing to realize, is that we do all kinds of things to block the flow of energy. And when I say energy, I mean all emotions. So all emotions are energy, whether it's sadness, fear, anger, sexual energy, happiness. All of them come from the same place. You can't have one without being willing to feel the other ones. So you can't be like, oh, I'm just going to be happy and never be angry or never be sad. So you have to really get friendly with all your feelings and be able to handle big emotions. So that's number one. But we have this huge array of energy, and what we do is we just totally block it off with our stories, with our beliefs, with the actions that we take, like we said earlier, when you lie. But I think a lot of people actually do that because you can't actually have enough sex, like physical sex, to satisfy most people's sex drives or the amount of sexual energy we have. You just couldn't physically be doing it. So that's where it's like, when you learn that there's a difference between having sexual feelings and how you express them, then when you choose, so say for me, I'm in a committed relationship, I choose to express, like physically express only with my husband, but I still have all these other feelings. I get to just run, once you become comfortable with them, I kind of like, oh no, ooh, I'm having some sexual feelings. I just get to kind of run that in my body, and then that just becomes energy and aliveness, which you can apply to anything. The problem is when you feel those things, like say I see a hot guy walking down the street, or sometimes it just has nothing to do with anything at all, I just feel it. If I think it's wrong, then I shut it down, and I don't have access to it for sex or for creativity or to go out and do anything. And all of a sudden, your body posture changes. I mean, you can tell, like, when somebody's like open and alive and relaxed and flowing versus when they're kind of like, you have to really physically hold onto yourself to hold it in you, to hold it down, to not acknowledge that it's there. But when you're like comfortable with it, it's like, oh, I'm feeling some aliveness. I literally, I think of sexual feelings and aliveness as the same thing. I literally think to myself, oh, what do I want to go do with this? Who do I want to call? What do I want to create? Is there something that I want to do that I can take this juicy aliveness to right now in this moment and do something with it? Because, otherwise we would just, like literally just kind of, I think that's why people shut off, is because they don't know what to do with it, or they don't think of it that way. They just think, oh my gosh, I'm having these feelings, I have to have sex. And it's like, you don't have to have sex, you can do anything.
Yeah, that's huge. So because there's a lot of two things you tapped onto that I think are powerful, is that even in being so authentic and breaking through some sort of belief system or barrier, I've seen a lot of relationships where it's like, they would want to proclaim that they're only attracted to their husband, or they're only attracted to their wife, and that, if you see a hot person, or an actor or actress that you think is hot, there's like, oh no, I only love you, babes. It's like in some way denying like that that's even possible, that there's amazing, beautiful people around, and there's not this form of attraction. So first off, I thought that was powerful, that you're just saying, hey, yeah, I'm fully authentic to go, yeah, like that's a really hot guy. But the man in your life being comfortable as a creator and validating himself, that it's doesn't have any reflection on him. And same thing vice versa. If he said, oh, she's a beautiful woman, it's not like, it doesn't, and I think people have these stories of, as soon as they go there, they have the authenticity, it hurts the other person. And this is the same shit that you were talking about at the beginning, by us just saying we're not allowing ourselves to feel what we're really feeling, or think what we're really thinking. There's kind of these shutdown stories around sex. And I love how you clarified that sexual energy is just an energy. It doesn't mean it's only meant for sex. And I know I had a powerful experience even this last week with Chris, where I just had some massive shit and resistance, and I got to work through and change that energy. And because sexual energy is the energy of creation, literally taking that painful emotion and energy and breathing through it and feeling that, and feeling the fear and the anger and the sadness that I was feeling, and then shifting the energy inside my body to be like, and it was almost like a sexual flow energy, to be like, okay, how do I get in tune with this energy and then exude it towards creation? And it didn't have to look at all like sex. It was just purely like tapping into like a flow and a beingness. And that's where you're talking about, it goes deeper into shifting it and feeling it.
Mm-hmm.
And it can go towards anything. Who am I going to call? What am I going to create? How do I take this energy and turn it into something that's effective for me? That's a producer type thing.
Yeah, it's well, that's where having kind of an idea in your life of what you're actually about, what you actually want to authentically create. Like even if you have a regular job that's maybe not your favorite thing ever, if you go out and you have, you know, whatever hobbies or things that you like to do that you can then take that energy and direct it to, that's really useful. When you don't have anywhere to direct it, that's when it gets messy. That's when you have this energy, you don't have anywhere to take it, and then all of a sudden you start, you know, projecting onto people. Like I think, oh, anytime I think someone else is turning me on, I know I'm in story. You know, so sometimes I'll be driving down the street and I'll see like, you know, a guy get out of a truck and he's got like muscular arms and I'll be like, ooh, you know, and it's so funny because if I check in with myself, I can immediately go to like how I think if I were with him, my life would be different somehow, or how he would add something that I don't have, or, you know, whatever. But sexual energy is like I'm the one who's creating it. It has absolutely nothing to do with him. And once I tune into that, then I can take it and go wherever I want with it. But if I have it attached to a person, even my husband, he doesn't, I mean, he turns me on, he's super hot, but he can't even turn me on if I'm not turning myself on. You know, like if I'm not showing up ready to play, there's nothing he could do. He could be, you know, doing all kinds of things or nothing at all, and it wouldn't work. So that's another thing too, is attaching your sexual feelings to other people, because then we think, oh, every time I'm around that person, I feel this way, therefore I might want to be with them, or it's somehow connected to them. When really underneath it's not. It's just you feeling a flow of aliveness, and if you kind of can get into that, then you can take it and do whatever you want with it.
But that's like the same understanding with anything. It's like someone in front of you can be doing everything possible to show up for you or to, you know, treat you well or whatever. And if your belief system is like, you know, people don't love me, or, you know, they're untrustworthy, it's like you are in choice of your perception, so your perception will create that. You'll look for that to be true. You'll like misperceive and prove that right, or you'll act out to prove that right. So I love that even makes sense to go, okay, so triggers happen around us all the time.
Yep.
So the trigger was the hot dude, the muscular guy with his shirt off, but that might not trigger somebody else, right? And so it's like it's a trigger, and yet you're in control of like, oh, okay, so it allowed something to show up for me, but I'm the one who created that, literally taking total responsibility for every single piece of your creation. And it makes sense in everything else. Why don't we think about it this way with sex?
Yeah, and I want to hit on something else that you said too about your ability to receive, like what basically your stories. So that's something that I learned, is that I got really early on, I kind of figured out, oh my gosh, I'm married to this amazing guy, but I'm only able to receive this much of him because of my own stories, because of my own, and I feel like that's where sex and life and how you show up in the rest of your life kind of come in. If I only believe that I'm worth this much, he could be total magnificence, but I still only see him as this much, and I can only receive that much pleasure in my body. So that's where what I do when I work with women, helping them learn how to breathe, relax, move, express, so that you can actually physically receive more pleasure. Because on a physiological level, we're kind of wired a certain way, and we kind of have a limit as to what we can handle pleasure-wise, both physically as in sex and also in the rest of life. And so that, you know, it gets limited because of trauma, you know, issues in childhood. Everything that's ever been done to us kind of hangs out in our body. So it becomes a practice to be able to open up, to relax, to feel whatever unfelt feelings there are. And then you start to be able to receive more and more and more. And all of a sudden, in my life, and what I've seen in many other women's lives as well, is not only does their mate, or if they don't have one, start to look good, but everybody else starts to look more and more amazing, and things start to kind of show up and come your way. But the thing is that it's not really that anything has changed so much. It's just that you're opening up to receiving more, you know, and that's why I say, like, sex can become a practice, because I just literally take that to the bedroom and I go, okay, how much pleasure can I experience? And I see that as a practice for the rest of my life, you know, that they go together. Opening up to more and more pleasure in the bedroom is opening up to life, and then in life it's the same thing, and they kind of just match each other.
So can we look at that? Because the one thing I'm very clear on now is that Okay, so when I'm in alignment, I feel good. When I feel good and I'm in alignment, I'm inspired to create. I'm, like everything flows when I feel good. That's the energy of creation. And yet, so you're saying like the more we allow ourselves pleasure, even in the bedroom, to pleasure outside. And when I put up a post the other day that said like you have 8,000 nerve endings for pleasure.
Oh, well, yeah,
And
probably way
give
more.
yourself,
Yeah.
say that again.
I said probably way more. I mean, that's just the clitoris, right? Or for women? Or because in
I
general,
don't
your
know
whole
where I
body.
got that, but I thought it was you that gave me that. And that's why I put it up, like even things
That's
that were in the
that's
show.
just
Maybe
the
it was just the clitoris. Holy
Your whole
shit!
body is designed for pleasure. Your
That's
entire
what I mean, though.
yeah.
So if we're designed for pleasure, and I mean, I've had a couple people on my show already that are like sex coaches and just different things, and it's been so interesting, like how even the woman's body is designed to receive, right? Like, and so there's these more conscious awareness of energy of that when you're in that flow that you're literally designed to receive, you're designed to feel good, you're designed to pleasure. The only way to create something is through feeling the energy of love, and the energy of or love and faith is that energy of creation. So the moment I'm in fear, or I'm not receiving, or I'm not allowing myself to feel good or pleasure, everything shuts down, like you said, and there's no, it's like you're just running into a wall over and over and over again. There's a block there for you to receive money, to receive epic relationships, to receive anything. So I love that the whole idea is when we have this understanding and we can see we are designed for pleasure, our whole entire system. So how else does that look that you allow people to break through that barrier that it's just about sex, but it's about feeling good in general?
Yeah, well, that's generally where the place to start is. For women in particular, which is who I mostly work with. You know, Learning to take time, allowing yourself to actually take, for example, taking a bath instead of a shower, like taking time on yourself, slowing down, allowing yourself to do nothing. Because to the extent that you're filling up your day and your life and taking care, now I'm not saying don't get shit done, don't do what you want to do, don't take care of yourself, but to the extent that you fill everything up, you have less room to receive. So it's almost like you have to empty things out. So, doing things purely for pleasure is where I always start. Are you willing to let yourself take a 10-minute bath? Are you willing to, go out at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and get a massage for no reason whatsoever and ask for exactly what you want? Tell the masseuse, okay, I want more pressure, less pressure, like not, letting them know exactly what you want. Not because it's your birthday, not because it's your anniversary, not because you did something, but purely because you deserve it, purely for pleasure. Another practice that I like to give women is asking them to take 5 or 10 minutes a day and simply focus on where they're feeling pleasure in their bodies. So, closing your eyes, kind of like a meditation, except it's just about finding pleasure or tuning into what would bring me pleasure in this moment. So right before our call, I was kind of getting set up here and I had my water, that makes sense. But I kind of tuned in and it's a little warm. Not really a perfect day for hot tea. But when I tuned in, like what would bring me pleasure was like a hot tea. So I made myself one, even though it's kind of just extra and I probably won't even drink the whole thing. Like letting myself tune in and do those things. Because most of the time, if you start to pay attention, you'll notice how quickly the thoughts will come up about, when I used to start with my bath time practice, I would think it was like a waste of candles to light them for my bath. Like, oh, I don't want to use this many candles just on me. If I'm having a dinner party, it's okay because other people are using them. But the candles, they cost whatever, $1, nothing, and you'll notice where your limits are. Now my bathroom is filled with candles and flowers, and I bring in fruit and, water. I set up a whole thing just for me, So I think that's a great place to start, is just placing your attention and asking yourself what would bring me pleasure in this moment.
Well, that's a reflection of your self-worth. And this is the core concept to allowing yourself to have an epic life of awesomeness, is that if you are in a belief system that you're not worth it, and it shows up in those ways, I can't take time for a bath, or, I wouldn't go get a massage unless I earned it, or I deserve it, it's my birthday, or, it's like, that's why you're living in the results you are in your life, is there's a belief that says I'm not worthy of abundance in every aspect. I'm not worthy of feeling good. I'm not worthy of pleasure. And so I love that they're the simple tool to start, because it's like for me when to create a balanced, awesome life, I went from the perfectionist identity who did everything and worked till 2 in the morning and got back up at 5 a.m. and single mom story and all this, like all that, and never took time for me. So to all of a sudden be like, you can't just all of a sudden, so I'll just have balance someday. And I hear that, like, I think people have that, well, yeah, once this project's done and once that's done and the kids are grown or blah, 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 I'll have balance. Bullshit. You'll have another project that'll show up, another thing, because that's your belief system that's going on and that's your creation, that's what you're living out of. So for me to even start allowing myself to create balance as my experience, it got to be that I scheduled it in, that I said, okay, I'm done at 3 o'clock to be with my boys, or this is when we go for a play date, and then now it's like your life becomes balanced. For me, I'm like, it's just a beach day. I'm like, I got my TV show, and then I get to go be with my son has an orientation after school I get to be at, and I'm like, that's why I'm like, I'm just hanging out in my bikini, I'm just gonna beach it, because literally, like, I like don't operate out of anything other than what feels good and joy. But you said, so this is where you start. Ask yourself, what would give me pleasure in this moment? And that can relate to anything.
And that's a very different question. So a lot of people like, what do I want? Or what do I want to accomplish? Or, what do I need? I mean, really, pleasure is a different thing. So sometimes it takes a while to kind of tune in, because it's like, you think, oh, I want to get this done, so that's what would bring me pleasure. No. Tuning into, like, because the other thing is that pleasure happens in the body. It doesn't happen in the mind. Your mind has an effect on it with stories you're telling yourself and all that, but it's actually a feeling state. So for most women and men, I would say it has something to do with slowing down, breathing, and relaxing. So I think I just want to make that distinction, because it's like a lot of times people think, oh, it would give me pleasure to be out on the beach, but then if you're having to, like, get up early, schlep all this stuff, blah, 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 rush, and stress yourself out to get there.
This is why I live by the beach.
Yeah.
Okay, you just take out the resistance. I don't want to drive to the beach. I just want to walk out to the beach.
Yeah, exactly. So that's just something to notice. If you have to stress out to get to the pleasure, then you're kind of defeating the purpose of,
pleasure.
The whole point. Yeah.
So simple things, even like you saying, make yourself a tea, do a bath, like taking out the stories. It doesn't have to be a big, massive thing. It can be in every single day, in every single moment. How do I just feel good? How do I be tapped into? What would I want this circumstance to look like? How would I give myself pleasure here? So before we move on, obviously, I want to let you guys know how you can continue to, find out about Kate or follow. Like, she does a blog that's amazing and always giving amazing tips and different things. I know she's got different experiences or retreat experiences, and she works with women on literally breaking through their blocks with sex and pleasure and all these different aspects. And what I love, Kate, which I want to dig into after this, is that all of that, like through sex and this understanding, is where you get to see where a lot of your other blocks and issues are and how they're all interconnected. Because what's so funny to me is, as I do the mind-body stuff, the people think, oh, well, is it just about the body? It's like bullshit. The body is just a reflection of your inner self-worth. The body will show up as the bonus when you're internally clear. But what's interesting is the same concepts or the beliefs around the body or associations of food, different things, show up in your business, show up in your finances, show up in your relationships, show up in everything. And so it's so cool that there's that connection even in this realm where you can say, how are you having sex? How are you showing up in sex? So if you can't be authentic with your spouse, you think you're really going to be authentic with your boss or your neighbor or, like your family members or even your children? Yeah, so that's super powerful. So to follow Kate or to connect with Kate or to find out about her different events or the, coaching opportunities, you can go to katerouze.com, which I'm going to spell it, KateRouze.com. So that's the best way to follow you. You guys obviously want to get the break through your lies and limitations to get the Rockin Body in life. You can get the free video series at Marci. I'm sorry. I have like 5 different websites. Mindbody90.com has the free video series. Obviously, this is where we got the app. You can get for free on iTunes. So check in. Make sure you guys can take advantage of all those awesome things and be able to follow Kate. So Kate, diving back in though, this is something that I think is really important. Maybe you can shed some light on, because you're married. You said you spent the last 15 years practicing with your husband and discovering these things and finding out the blocks were inside you. So how do you relate this to someone who's single? Because I get all the time people are single, there's all these stories around it. Like I was talking to this guy who's a $1 million producer yesterday, has $1 million businesses, and he's like, well, how do I, and looking at what's missing in his life from having the epic experience he wants. And if there's beliefs and blocks around relationships, which a lot of badass people have because they create an awesome life, and then that's the space that they're unclear, and we could go off on that forever. But there's this thought about, it's like, well, yeah, I can't have sex unless I'm with somebody or I'm pouring myself out. There's like blocks and barriers or certain limitations around receiving pleasure versus in sex. I mean, obviously you're talking about you can take that sexual energy and tap it into a resource. But do you ever work with people like women who are single versus married and have that partner they're learning to express within that practice? What guidance do you give someone who's single on how they tap into pleasure, or breaking some stories around them tapping into that sexual energy in that way?
Yeah. So, well, first of all, I think for women, the most important thing is to tune into what actually feels good. So not only say, because if you're single and you're having sex, like I personally, I'm not one to say, oh, you should be in a relationship to have sex. But tuning into what feels good, not only before and during sex, but after. So that's going to be a big lead. If you're in some relationship and you're not, and you're like, oh, that was great, but I feel like shit the next day, then there's something to check out, So that would be my first kind of hint as far as with other people. But I think the most important place to start is with yourself. So having a pleasure practice. So both just in your life, but also on your own sexually. Start tuning in, giving time to yourself, learning about your body in such a way that you would know what you want if you were in a relationship. How do you like to be touched? Exploring yourself, giving yourself the things that you would want to be given by a partner. So for me, for example, I go back to the candles in the bathtub. I really like that. So I give it to myself on a regular basis. Then when my man comes along, or if I were single, when I get in a relationship with someone, anything they give me is extra. Now, I'm not coming at them with a needy, like, oh, I need this from you, I've been waiting, or, you can't come at sex with an expectation. Because as soon as you do that, so in the beginning of relationships, it's all great and wonderful, and there's lots of passion, because it's all just, there's less expectations, It's, oh, you're just so happy to be with them. Then after a while, you start to want things, expect things, different things. And so that would be the place where I would start, is whatever you imagine yourself wanting from a partner, start learning to give that to yourself. And that takes time, space, kind of discipline, like you say, like scheduling it in, like, okay, I'm going to have a practice session this morning, whether it's explicitly sex or whatever else it is. If you imagine like, oh, it would be so amazing to have a man so he could give me a massage. Again, I go back, like, oh, go out and give yourself get a massage, those kind of things. But also if you, imagine a life where you're, oh, I wish I talk about, I have a lot of friends that's like, when they're on their own, they don't necessarily feed themselves so well. They don't like cook for themselves, or, oh, it's just me, it's just one person. It's like, you start treating yourself like the queen of your, palace, of your place of universe, And then that's when you're going to be able to attract someone who will kind of fit into that energy. Because if you're walking around waiting and kind of going, oh, would that person give me what I want? Kind of like what I said earlier, that guy who I saw had like strong muscles, and I just kind of imagined this whole life on a farm, and I don't know, I just like kind of went off. It's like, oh, okay, if that's really what I want, how do I create that for myself and let someone fit into that pattern, versus hoping someone will come in and just totally change my life?
I think that's huge. As you started saying that, I'm like, wow, that is a powerful nugget, is that you can't, when you're waiting, and especially in the sex arena, because I hear this a lot with singles, it is oh, when I'm in a relationship, then I can be there, or then I can have sex, or then I can have pleasure. And then when you get into it, like you said, you're putting an expectation on someone else, and then you're not a creator. You're a victim of circumstance. And when you're a victim of circumstance, you are not in control of your world. You just get what you hope shows up, or you get what shows up based on your subconscious limiting beliefs, really. And so when you're saying, well, and so you say that they have a sexual experience, and then it's like, oh, well, that didn't fulfill me. And that's where you were starting off in the beginning, saying, if I don't have a great sexual experience, it's because of how I participated and how I created it and what I did. And that I love that you're saying, instead of projecting it to be a need from someone else, how do you go inside and you give yourself that now? Because that is the alignment of a goddess. Okay, mind, body, heart, spirit alignment is, I am worthy of everything being awesome. I am fully 100% worthy already. Even if I'm in shit, I'm in my shit, there's no judgments or attachments or stories of shame or bad or wrong or good or bad, or, you know, all these things that it has to look a certain way, these things that we've been taught. And when we're worthy of it ourselves to receive it, literally, that's when we get to create it. I'm worthy of absolute abundance. I'm worthy of a rockin' body of health. I'm worthy of epic relationships. I'm worthy of living my passion, my purpose. I'm worthy of pleasure and receiving and all these things. So if you're even in, say that you're rocking in business, you're, you know, rocking in your spiritual connection, you're meditating and you're going inside for peace and you're rocking in your body, but if you're saying, oh, if I'm not in a relationship and I am, it's like saying I'm unworthy. I can't have this until it looks this way. You're creating a massive disconnect in ever creating that relationship or space, because you're saying I'm unworthy to receive right now as I am.
Yep.
And this is something that it's this deeper consciousness I feel like so many people in general don't understand, but especially women, is that you're already perfect, whole, and complete. When you put a story of like, oh, I'll be perfect when I have a good body, or I'll be perfect when, you know, this is rocking my business, or I'll be perfect there. That's why you're not creating it now, is because you're saying something outside of me, an external substance, has to validate that I'm good enough, instead of the validation comes from within me. And you are literally giving clarity right now of like, how do you create the validation from within you that I'm worthy of pleasure, I'm worthy of receiving? How do I give that to myself now? And this is how, you know, I use a 5-step to overcome sabotage. It's like, what feeling am I feeling? And what feeling am I really wanting that? Now, how do I give that to myself? And that might even be asking the question, like you said, what would give me pleasure right now? How do I give myself love? Meaning, go get a massage, or go hit the beach, or, you know, go get an awesome workout in, because that's loving myself. Like, what will give me love? How do I love myself? And then I'm in the energy of receiving and the energy of love, and I'm in flow to create. And just life gets to be fucking fantastical.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's important. And I love what you touched on about what am I feeling now and what do I want to feel. And I feel like an important step for most people is to be willing to feel whatever they're actually feeling in the moment. So if you're feeling sad, if you're feeling angry, if you're feeling scared, to just be with that, to breathe, to be like, oh, okay, to let yourself feel that all the way through. And for a lot of people don't even know what that means, you know. So for me, what I teach my clients is to, like, if I'm having a feeling, if I, you know, how do I want to move my body to let it be in me? Because you can't skip from how do I want to feel without actually, you can't go to where you want to go without feeling it where you are present. Yeah. And so, because underneath all of those feelings, for me, what I've discovered is when I learn how to breathe and move and be with that, under all of it is like sexual feelings and creativity. You know, sadness can be joyful. You know, I can be, you know, and that's another thing that I think people get confused in sex is, you know, you can be having great sex and then a feeling will come up and people think, oh, you know, I'm feeling scared or angry or whatever, that's bad. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a reason to stop. It's just letting those feelings flow through you. So being able to flow with the feelings until you kind of are feeling better, I think is so key. Because if people think, oh, I'm always feeling sad, there's something wrong with me, I need to fix myself. No, sadness just happens, and if I learn how to be with it, it's like I can actually now, you know, I think of my grandfather who I was really close to. He actually died around this time of year 6 years ago, and I think of him and it's like such a sweetness, and I actually feel pleasure in my body as I'm also feeling sad. Whereas before I used to be like, oh my gosh, I need to fix this, I shouldn't think of him, oh, I didn't, you know, blah, 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 how do I deal with this? But it's like you can actually be feeling pleasure through all of your feelings. It just takes a willingness to be with them.
So what you just tapped onto is distraction. Because like how we're conditioned is we feel pain or we feel sadness, anxiety, something that isn't associated with joy or feeling good, and instead of feeling it and allowing it to get clear with it and be okay and worthy of feeling it, we go to distraction, which you said I shouldn't even think about. Oh, this just tells me I shouldn't think about my grandpa. So, oh, how do I turn on the TV, or, you know, go to, it's like we distract or we go to food. And this is, I actually posted about this last night. My little boy was meditating, my 7-year-old. I come in around the corner I was helping my 11-year-old, my oldest Sky, with his opportunity assignments, is what I like to call them because homework has a negative connotation, but his homework, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I walk around the corner, and my little boy is like, he have his legs crossed, just like a meditation pose, on a chair with his hands out like this, down, and he was in full-on like meditation mode, like he was
Awesome.
going in, and I was like, love it, because because that's when something, and when I talked to him after, he said, you know, I started feeling sad about this, and he said, so I went inside to create peace and to give myself peace, like to go internal. So until we're in that clear understanding that it's okay to feel the feeling, though. You talked about breathing through it and moving through it. That's something that was huge for me in understanding, is if it's in my chest, it's fear. If it's in my head, it's anger. If it's in my stomach, it's sadness and or feeling scared. And so it's like, how do I feel that and breathe? And you mentioned something which most people wouldn't have even heard, Kate. Move through it. Move with it. Like emotion creates emotion. So as I even feel this feeling of sadness and fear, and I can tap into like, why am I feeling this way? And I can go into the head, like you said, process, like, oh, this is just from that, you know, this triggered me. It's from my old limiting belief that says that, you know, relationships suck, or people are untrustworthy, or that, you know, I'm a failure, or whatever it is. And we can go, oh, that's not really true. And we can get clear with it and process it in our mind. And when we just try to shut it down and go, okay, well, I want to feel this way. This is what I want. It's like not honoring ourselves. It's like not giving ourselves the time, the worthiness to say, I am perfect, whole, complete in whatever I experience, and that in of itself is speaking to the universe and creation that I can have whatever I want. Like, it's okay for me to be here in this moment. It doesn't have to look a certain way. I don't have to be like happy, positive all the time. And I think that's a massive disconnect. Don't you see that as a massive disconnect in how most people think empowerment works or what they teach? There's a lot of what I think are shitty-ass coaches out there that don't really have the results in life. And it's like, turn around the thought, shift the thought, like just be positive. That's kind of like the surface, like the secret, instead of getting in tune with feeling and the deeper consciousness of your worth.
Yeah, well, I think, you know, one thing is that, you know, when you said it, like, emotion, it's motion, it's actual energy in your body, and it needs to move, or else it just gets blocked there and stays there. If you feel angry, and if you think, oh, this is why I'm angry, I shouldn't be angry, and you change your thought around, but you don't actually allow yourself to feel angry, including whatever it is that you want to do. And it doesn't have to be like a big rage, you know, oh, I have to scream or anything, but just to be like, oh, I feel angry, and like let yourself kind of like, you know, for me, I like to like clench my fists and just, you know, let myself feel it. Then I move actually through my body. Otherwise, it just hangs out there, and me changing my thoughts might feel good for 2 seconds, might feel good for a day, but, you know, generally when I meet people, a lot of women learn to have this happy mask. Everything is happy. Everything is great in my life. Happy, happy, happy. I generally know that those are people who are pretty unhappy, like have some real issues, because everything is just getting like stuffed down. And, you know, I think the other thing that we're taught is, you know, from very young age, like when people cry, when women cry, when boys, in particular boys, cry, we kind of like, oh, what's wrong? We try and stop the tears, you know, oh, what can I do to fix it? That if crying or feeling a feeling is bad and that somehow it needs to be fixed, which generally comes from a very, you know, can come from a loving place of like, oh, I don't want you to feel sad. Here, have a cupcake or whatever. What do you want to feel? You know,
that's where all this bullshit starts, right? It's like, oh, you distract from your feeling. Here's something else. You just nailed it.
Learning to be with whatever. And, you know, for a long time, I like just cried kind of all the time. Sometimes they were happy tears. Sometimes they were sad. Sometimes I was angry. A lot of times with women, we cry when we're angry, but we're taught that we're not allowed to express anger. We don't actually know how to express anger or, like, you know, like convey the depth of what we're feeling, so it comes out in tears. And being willing to just like learn to be with those things, both in yourself and with other people, you know. So a lot of times before you get to this place of like feeling good all the time, a lot of other emotions have to kind of like cycle up. All the emotions that you've ever kind of stuffed down in your body are going to come up at random moments, at random times, and you have to learn how to be with them. Otherwise you think, first of all, I thought, what's going wrong? Like, am I going crazy? You know, just like crying happy tears all the time, you know, this isn't normal. But it was just a kind of a releasing. So I think that's where another level of being comfortable with emotion comes from, because you can't get to the place where you're feeling good if you've been stuffing. It's kind of like, you know, I'm sure along the lines of what you teach, you know, your body isn't going to transform overnight from something that's a, you know, functioning perfectly if you've been putting crap in it for years. It takes time, you know. Same thing with emotions and learning how to feel good. You kind of have to like let your body work out the kinks first, and then you can start to feel good more and more of the time.
Awesome. There's something else that I thought was cool that you talk a lot about, which is authenticity. Like, so this is a perception shift. For some people, when they first start becoming authentic, because I usually coach people on an authenticity cycle of like how to truly communicate, but because I believe like less than 1% of the population knows how to really communicate. So in relationships, because there's no authenticity, they see something, they create a perception about it, like you were, you know, like all of a sudden where you're like, oh, I don't even want to be around this person, or that person bugs me, or they do this, and that's because they don't respect me, and they might not even be aware, and it's a perception thing, right? So, but when when people start doing that, before they really experience peace, usually they feel more disconnect, because when the way we're trained is, you know, when we feel pain, we go into defense, or we go into our things to like revert from it, because almost accepting it or looking at it, it's like other people see it as failure. I see it as like, I love feedback. I love feedback. Mm-hmm. I love if someone has any perception for me that allows me to get more clear, like, oh, okay, so that if that's, you know, how if my little boy, if I say something and he takes it a certain way, I would want to know. Right. So that I am more clear in shifting that, so that I'm only exuding to him what I really believe, which is love, right? And so most people experience authenticity sucks, because it creates more fighting, more disconnect. And that's when I say, well, that's because you're still, you stopped the cycle too soon. Until you get to a total, like around the whole cycle where you're in solution and peace, it doesn't change. But I love how you say this, and this is, I think, a good perception shift for people to see why it's more pleasure in moving towards authenticity, just like the space of being free, than more pain, is you say it's sexy. Authenticity is sexy. It's like, and I've seen that, and most of the time I have when I hang out in a new environment with or meet new people, especially being here now in San Diego, and you know, people are like, I've never been around a woman who just is so owns who she is and how she is and her truth and her power, and there's no like holding back, and it's like that's so different for most people to experience, but that it's sexy for a woman to be fully confident in love with who she is, however she shows up, and like no attachments. It's like I don't need to show up perfectly for you, because I'm perfectly being me, and this is perfect for me, and this makes me happy. And you're saying, like, if you think about it, women, if we hold back, and even in bed, or hold back in saying what we want, there's nothing sexier than for a woman to take full confidence in herself and be like, I love it when this, and this is what I want, and this is, you know, it's like having their own opinion, having that. It's like you're saying that's really sexy. How can you, you know, clarify a little bit more on that gives people that perception that it's authenticity is one of the most powerful things you can experience for your life?
Yeah. Well, I think it goes back to what I said earlier about your throat being, you know, vocalizing what you want is the, you know, biggest sexual organ is from here to here. But I think, you know, a key, like, so a practical tip in bed, when I talk to women about, well, both women and men, but I mean, as soon as you're thinking about what you imagine the other person might want, I mean, this goes in life too, you know, sex and life are created. Like, if I'm doing things because I think this is going to turn them on, instead of tuning into what actually feels good or what I actually want, that is, you're being inauthentic. Like, you're lying, whether you're in the bedroom or, you know, out on the street. So, you know, I think that that's something that, like, so much of our, you know, the culture that even talks about sex, you know, like if you look at like Cosmo or whatever, you know, sex websites, it's all about tips and how-tos and whatever. All you really need to do is be willing to tune into what you want and express that, you know, and why I also say, like, breathe, relax, you know, because you can't find out what you want if you're totally tense, and if you're thinking, you know, oh, well, this is what I think he would like, or he liked this last time, or whatever. And the same thing for men, you know, it goes both ways, because people can feel, even if you're not like super conscious or tuned into your body, everybody can feel when you're coming from your head, doing what, you know, kind of doing a routine or what you think you should be doing, versus coming from a place of like, oh, this really feels good, and, you know, I'm expressing authentically what I want, or not even what I want, but how I'm feeling, you know. So I think that's another thing that we kind of cut off our voices in life, but also in the bedroom. You know, if you're not expressing pleasure, a lot of women, can feel a lot of pleasure, but you actually can feel more pleasure in your body when you use your voice, just vocalizing and letting it out. I think a lot of women have ideas about what sounds sexy. It's like little high pitched, like right? But that's just one of many like flavors of what feels good and how that can be expressed through your voice. So letting authentic sounds out, all of that. It's all just tied right in with how you show up out there, and out there is.
I think I let out authentic sexual sounds when I eat sushi too.
Yeah.
If it's good sushi, it just I'm like.
Yeah. Well, that's another thing too. That's a pleasure practice. I actually send women out to dinner to explicitly with learning how to like both tap into and express pleasure while they're eating. Because we're just taught that's totally inappropriate. And the reason why it's inappropriate is because it's going to turn everybody on, but it also turns you on, and like learning. So when I'm out with my friends, if I'm out with guys or other couples, I'm not sitting there like, oh, over my food. But if I'm with my man and I want to have a sexy evening, you sure as hell know I'm going to be like, oh, expressing that, but that's the cool thing is you learn about these things and then you get to tune into when you want to express them and when you don't. But if you don't even have it, you don't even have a clue, then, you're, first of all, you're probably expressing them sideways out, with people you don't want to be really doing that with, and then you're not even able to do it when you want to. So
Kate, you're phenomenal. I love having these conversations with you, and I know we like scratched the surface. Yeah. So what's going to be cool is having you at the Goddess Experience for the day that we really break into these social agreements and tapping into relationships and sexual energy and that feminine energy combined with that masculine energy, and that's what Goddess is about, is totally aligning as a goddess. I'm so excited you're going to be a part of that. But so for the peeps listening right now today, what would be the last thing you would really want to share, or maybe like the biggest tip you'd want to share for where they can start now? Where if they're obviously blocked in this arena or they haven't been experiencing pleasure. I mean, you've given tips all along the way, but any last thing that you really want to share with people that to help them get through this process or start on this process?
Yeah, I think I would say a number one practice that I would offer for being able to be with your feelings is taking, even if it's just 2 minutes or 5 minutes a day, of doing a deep breathing practice, so where you fill your lungs from the bottom, I would say 4 or 5 seconds in, 4 or 5 seconds on the exhale, and just allowing yourself to be with whatever comes up. So you'll find probably in the beginning not too much will happen, but even if you just allow yourself to breathe for up to 5 minutes, eventually stuff is probably going to come up, whether it's sadness, fear, or your sexual feelings. And just tuning into what comes up in your body is like a great place to start, because that is also an amazing tool to be able to have when you're having feelings, when you're having sex, when you're out on the street, when you're doing, creating your business and something comes up that you don't know how to handle. Being able to go back to just a few deep breaths, it actually resets your entire nervous system. And it's the space where you can start to kind of change the wiring in your body to go from kind of all these like tensed up, twisted kind of connections between fear thoughts and how your body responds, to shake that all up so that you can start to experience more pleasure kind of throughout your day and wherever else you want.
And just to recap, allowing yourself to experience pleasure, allowing yourself to receive, is saying, I'm worthy of accepting money, I'm worthy of epic relationships, I'm worthy of a rockin' body, I'm worthy, and I allow myself to create that, instead of you going through actions on the surface that are creation actions that you're blocked in receiving. Love it. It's such a simple truth. So just start practicing ways of allowing yourself, whether it be asking your questions like, what would give me pleasure right now, and making yourself a cup of tea, to having a bath, to even like giving yourself the ability to have pleasure and know what it is that you really want. Like, I love it, Kate. You're awesome and phenomenal. So if you guys want to follow Kate's blog or check out any future events that she has coming up where she really taps into this, or if you get to experience, you guys are some of the awesome peeps that get to experience her this next week in the Goddess Experience, you're really blessed, really blessed. I just get to say it's going to go super deep. So make sure you follow Kate or touch base with her at Kate Rouse, KateRouze.com, to be able to follow her blog and see what's going on with her. Again, you can go to mindbody90.com to get those lies or the videos on breaking through the lies and limitations stopping you, that you can be worthy of having it all as well, and get the app, be able to follow us, check out the show, watch it over and over again, get all these little tips that Kate gave and write them down because they're awesomeness. So, Kate, any last words that you want to suggest for anybody or say anything to end us off today?
Thank you. I've had such a great time chatting with you, collaborating.
So you're like, just give yourself pleasure. Right? That was awesome. Cool. Okay, you guys, have an amazing, wonderful day. Remember that the power of choice is yours, so choose your best life and lock it down.